everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am the Darklight Emissary, and this episode is on 5 of the largest ships in the Imperium. This is going to focus on the biggest, sometimes unique vessels, and also some of the ships of the line within the Imperial Navy. Other than that, it's going to be focused on just a lot of the ships that I have grown to love over the last decade plus of reading the lore, and I think that 40k has some of the best ships available to see, and some of the most magnificently massive, unapologetically just insane types of vessels that we have never seen before in some other settings. Some other settings do it better, but I feel like they're far in between. However, I'd say even like when growing up, Star Wars was probably where I first got a love for giant capital ship fights and battles and things like that. And I was really glad to see that Warhammer also has those available as well. First is the Universe class mass conveyor. These are 12 kilometers long in size, used for a rather simple purpose. The undertaking to create a ship this size is truly monumental. Meant to bring fuel to the fires of war, the Imperium finds itself perpetually embroiled in. These ships bring up to 500,000 passengers, along with supplies and equipment, to help deploy or replenish to theaters of war. Due to the size of these vessels, they basically develop cities and cultures of their own over time. The crew alone is 60,000 individuals before passengers. So you can imagine in the deepest parts of the ships, there could be entire societies of deserting soldiers and crew building basically free trade cities and hideaways, which to the Imperium amounts to a rounding error of missing efficiency. As far as I can tell, mass conveyors don't seem to carry weapons for their own defense, since they are focused so solely on their purpose and role. I imagine they still have some form of small point defense type energy weapons, like LAS type weapons. It's not like the Imperium to not put a gun on something. I found some rules for Rogue Trader saying the ships have a rating of 1, which seems like the lowest rating. I'm not familiar with Rogue Trader, someone can clarify for me, with only 3 turret hardpoints listed. So definitely not in any way going to go anywhere on their own. They'd be sitting massive targets, but I imagine you will see these being escorted by massive battle fleets, since these ships are important to the logistical fabric of the Imperial war machine itself. Next are one of my favorite class of massive vessel, the Gloriana class battleships. There were only around 20 of these ships made. There are a few more than that, but we'll focus on 20. Each meant to be a gift to one of the Primarchs by the Emperor of Mankind. Glorianas were all different sizes and configurations, each as much a gigantic war vessel with many weapon systems, but also just as much for the sheer power of these single vessels are for an entire battle group. They were often also the nerve center during the Great Crusade for command and control for the Primarchs of each legion in a theater of war. Each Gloriana was personally customized by its Primarch to reflect the personality and tastes of both the Primarch and legion it represented. The White Scars, for example, modified theirs to move faster. The Space Wolves turned the inside of their ship into basically a Norse Valhalla mythic paradise with carved wood, gigantic carved bones of monsters, and giant halls to host victories and tell tales of glory around giant tables, drinking their unique form of alcohol and things like that. The Emperor's Children Legion was one of magnificently opulent palaces of arts and culture, while the Death Guard didn't adorn theirs at all, leaving theirs unpainted like their armor, the halls stark and clean as the day they left their birthing shipyards. The largest of them is the Invincible Reason from the Dark Angels Legion, at a staggering 28 kilometers in length, with gigantic hallways lined with stone pillars, polished stone or marble floors, and braziers burning throughout. One could be forgiven for thinking they might be in a castle or other edifice, and not realize it's a vessel in space due to the size if you were to somehow be teleported aboard it and didn't know where you were. You are going to see as video footage from Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 a recording of the Macrag's Honor, the Gloriana in service to the Ultramarines and Robot Guilliman. One of the ones still active 10,000 years later in the current era, and that'll give you a good approximate example of the fierceness of one of these vessels. I feel like Battlefleet Gothic does a great job of showing them off. The scale is a bit off though, don't take it as a true scale, although they're also absolutely massive in that game as well. They range typically between a whole 10 kilometers, between 20 to 30 kilometers is what size disparity for different sizes of Gloriana. Why the sheer size disparities between each is only really known to the Emperor though. By the time of the current era in the setting, many of these vessels are missing or possibly destroyed. A few of these on the Loyalist side, amongst the most ancient, respected, and feared vessels the enemies of the Imperium would ever have to face. Likewise, the Imperium fears the return of several of these vessels who have been twisted by the forces of chaos to cause terror and doom amongst Loyalists to the false god. Many of them are just absolute nightmarish forms now. Most prominent among them, the former flagship of Horus himself, the Vengeful Spirit, which is currently the flagship Abaddon the Despoiler of the current era Leaders of Chaos. Every one of these ships is a brawler and ender of worlds and entire enemy fleets, and I love the unique nature of each one. Next, we have something that may be less a ship and more a mobile battle station, but it has thrusters and can travel through the warp on its own, so it's still a ship in my opinion, and that is the Phalanx. It is basically moon-sized. The size of it in Battlefleet Gothic Armada I was reading about is actually undersized on purpose, so that it couldn't completely overpower everything else in the game, so for balance reasons. Just to give you an indication of how insanely large this vessel is. It has a hangar bay so large that it can maintain its own microclimate in it. This base of operations was used by the Imperial Fists Legion and their Primarch Rogal Dorn for the Great Crusade and Heresy era. Unlike the mass conveyors or the Gloriana class vessels, it was not created by the Imperium at all, but came with Rogal Dorn when he was reunited with the Emperor. It is rumored the Phalanx is some relic from the Dark Age of technology that Rogal Dorn found, although some speculated it is wholly a design from Dorn himself. There's a lot of argument online about that I've seen. At very least, the Phalanx was at least upgraded or modified by Dorn into more of a fortress than its possible original form. If it was discovered by Dorn and not completely built by him, and I personally tend to think he found it and retrofitted it into a fortress world ship thing. Like, he definitely would have retrofitted it to be more like a fortress. That's just classic Dorn. The Phalanx, after the Heresy, eventually went into somewhat of a semi-abandoned state during the long ages between the 30th millennium to the 40th. Whole decks left unused or underutilized after the Space Marine legions were broken up. Though occasionally, the Phalanx was used as a place of counsel and judgment amongst the successor chapters of Dorn, because when the Soul Drinkers were brought to judgment aboard it. The Phalanx fought in conflicts like the 13th Black Crusade, and almost was both commandeered and destroyed by the forces of chaos. But like its chapter that has called it home for millennia, it carries on like an old, bold, indomitable bruiser, still brawling its way through the enemies of the Imperium. Hurt but not never broken. In most recent developments, the Adeptus Custodes assisted in helping to restore the heart of the vessel to full working order, bringing some measure of its former glory back to service to the Emperor. This is one of the only vessels the Imperium has that approaches rivaling one of the Eldar craft worlds in mass and size. And I will try to find footage of a craft world in Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. It's on one of the missions, and you can see that that vessel is way more massive than they made the Phalanx, and that's because the craft world is not anything controllable by your forces in the game. It's just so they can make them more to scale versus the smaller, more compact size that they've made the Phalanx, but you can still imagine the Phalanx being like 10 times bigger than that. Next is a revisit from our rare weapons video, the Esperanza, which is a vessel of the Adeptus Mechanicus, known as the Arch Mechanicus in class. There are a few vessels with that status, but they are mostly all seemingly bespoke vessels. Esperanza possibly most unique amongst them. It was discovered in the crust of a forge world, and waking it up devastated the surface of that world permanently. The vessel is possibly the size of the Phalanx or even bigger. It's never given an exact length or size. It is noted, though, that smaller capital ships can basically dock and tether to it, and that Titans can roam mock battlefields set up on training fields within it. A Titan even fired a plasma weapon that is known for leveling entire city blocks that did only minimal damage to the ship itself. And along with its size, the Esperanza wields some of the rarest, most singular weapon systems of the entire Imperium. It's a relic of the Dark Age of technology, and has some of those ancient forgotten weapons, such as at least one cannon that fires micro black holes, and chrono weapons that can force a targeted foe backwards in time slightly to push it into the singularity fired by its black hole cannon. It's truly a singular, powerful, unique vessel, and quite possibly one of the largest the Imperium currently has. And then last, but certainly not least, is the Rock, which is the leftover bit of the destroyed homeworld of the Dark Angels, Caliban. This is definitely more of a fortress with thrusters than a ship, but it is fully mobile and can travel through the warp, and so it qualifies for that for me. The Imperium does have a bigger type of fortress that they can move through space as well, but those fortresses have to be towed by other vessels. They can't just move on its own, apparently. So I'm qualifying these by if they can move on their own. And on occasion, the Dark Angels use this ship with its fearsome armaments to devastating results. Most likely the largest thing on this list, if you see this colossal remembrance of the Dark Angel's tenacity, you must have really angered the Angels or Imperium at large. Capabilities of the Rock as a ship of war are not fully tested, but the Angels may have many relics from the Dark Age of technology aboard it. And I imagine some of its available weapon systems have to be as esoteric, or more so, than the Esperanza previously mentioned. Of special note regarding this vessel, it's known to the Emperor alone that at the heart of this vessel is the Primarch of the First Legion that continues to sleep. A secret even his own chapters of Angels don't realize yet. Only the mysterious Watchers in the Dark that assist the Angels aboard the Rock know of and attend the Lion, until as of yet unknown date, when the Lion will wake again. The true size of the Rock isn't seemingly known. There's a few different depictions and interpretations of what it looks like, or exactly what it looks like, but it must be a foreboding, immense, powerful-looking beacon of righteous and focused intent, like its parent chapter. And that's a bit about a few of the biggest vessels in the Imperium. As always, please like and subscribe for more of my content. Leave a comment with a request for a future video, or talking about the topic at hand. Bring your light into the dark places, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks and have a great day or night, wherever you are.